Hey everybody, it's great to be back with you this month for Diving In with the Waters. We appreciate all of your love, prayers. This month's family focus was dealing with life after loss, or living through loss. And we continue to pray for all of you who are dealing with various types of loss. We know that grief is a real thing and everyone's course or path to recovery is different.
This month for February, our church focus has been on diverse family structures. That would include single family homes, families of widows, as well as foster, adoptive, and blended families. The latter three types of families is where we have focused this month. As we have reached out to different individuals who are a part of those types of family structures, we came to realize how delicate of a topic that is, and that it needs to be handled with great sensitivity and care. So whereas we had thought we would come featuring those families through Diving In with the Waters, as well as within our Family Intercessory Group Roundtable, we've realized that we need to create a more intimate and private platform for families of adoptive and foster children, as well as those blended families, to be able to come together to be of support of one another. So we're asking that you stay tuned for information about how we will support and bring those families together. And if you are one who is a part of foster, adoptive, or blended families, and you would benefit from such a support network, we ask that you reach out to us by emailing us at wellwaters@gmail.com. wellwaters@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you and to know what types of support really would have been beneficial to you and your families as you've created families by love as the Lord has led you.
In light of the redirection of our efforts, we wanted to take this time to tell a little bit about our story and why Diving In with the Waters is so important to us. My name is Edwin Waters. I am from Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up on the east side of Baltimore in the city. First home that I remember is 1516 Caroline Street, and then moving to 1922 Washington Street. And those two homes were probably through elementary school, if I remember my time correctly.
My name is Monica Waters. I grew up in Baltimore City from the age of 0 to 5. When I turned 5 years old, my family moved to Randallstown, Maryland. I am an only child, so in my home there was just me, my mother, and my father.
My mom was a single parent. It was 5 of us. I have 3 older brothers, 1 older sister. They're 3 years apart between my sister and I, and 3 years apart from my sister and my next brother. My 2 oldest brothers, they were a lot older than we are, a lot older than I am, me being the youngest of the 5.
Growing up in my early ages, my father worked for the State Department of Education, and his job entailed going to various public schools within Baltimore City and some of the surrounding counties. I actually remember him traveling quite frequently to counties such as Talbot County, Wicomico County, Dorchester County, and these were counties up in the mountains. There were occasions where he would take me with him.
I never knew my dad, my father. I have no memory of him. I only have a vague memory of being at his funeral. That's all I can remember. So no father figure, no example of a normal home, what we call normal, with a husband, wife, and children, family structure. So that I didn't grow up with. As I said, it was just a single parent, just my mom and my 4 siblings.
My mom worked at Bethlehem Steel in Sparrows Point, Maryland, and because that's where she worked, the arrangement was that I would spend the days with my grandparents, her parents, who lived in Edgemere, Maryland. So on her way to work, she would be able to drop me off at their home and then proceed to work.
My mom is a great mom. She's in my opinion, the best mother in the world, the best mother anyone could ever have. Though she was a single mother, she loved us, she cared for us, she worked hard, she always worked to provide for us. We did not have a lot, could not afford a lot, but she did what she could to provide for us and give us things as we were growing up.
So most of my time was spent with my mom. My father was either traveling or he would get home late. And so most of my childhood experiences or memories with school performances or other activities just consisted of my mother and me.
My mom was always single. She never married. She always talked about the desire of being married. But at one point of our lives, we did have a man living in our home. That was not a good experience, an experience that I would care to think about or remember because he was abusive. I had to watch how he treated my mom, how he talked to my mom, and in addition to that, it wasn't until I believe my adult years, maybe my later teens, that I realized that he was inappropriate towards my sister, and also he oftentimes touched me inappropriately. I never talked to my mom about that. Honestly, thinking back, I don't know if I didn't want to, was scared to, didn't think to do it. I have no idea. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my brothers. If I told my brothers, I don't know how they would have responded, what their reaction would have been, but I didn't say anything. I know that I've heard people say that they go through different experiences as children or in their childhood, and I don't know if they mentally block it out or it's just something that happens where it just blocks out of your mind. But if I feel like that's what happened to me because it wasn't until my later years that I remembered and I realized that I had been touched inappropriately. And I've also often wondered if that experience had any effect on who I turned out to be, or even as a teenager, and being able to relate to friends and having relationships, if that was something that had an effect on my life. But I can truly say that today that, I have no anger in my heart. I don't hold anything against this person. He's passed away. So I don't have any anger or any negative feelings about that. But I know that it's real. I know that it's something that people go through, adults, children have to go through. And I know we're going to get to this later, but this is why we do what we do, so that people can be free.
So because I stayed with my grandparents every day during the summer as well as during the school year, I was enrolled at Edgemere Elementary School. That was not my home school, obviously, and it was somewhat challenging. I was an outsider, and I really felt like most of the students either knew each other, lived in the same communities, were related, and so I never really quite fit in. And I was actually, prime to be targeted for what would be called bullying now. Back then it was just kids being kids. So I was called different names, such as Oreo cookie, meaning black on the outside, white on the inside. And there were various pranks that were played on me as well. It didn't help necessarily that my grandfather was relatively strict, so that meant, life was going to take place on his property. So I would ride my bike in circles every day in his driveway. Maybe I would swing, maybe I would look out the window. But life growing up as a child in Edgemere didn't provide for a lot of excitement. The fortunate thing was that I did have cousins who lived nearby. So when they were home, we were able to spend time together. But in terms of fostering relationships and friendships, that was a challenge that began early in life. My mother did allow me to go to my homeschool starting in 7th grade. I was able to ride the bus with the kids from the neighborhood and begin that process of trying to foster relationships with those in my community. What I found, however, was that because most of those kids had grown up together or had been in elementary school for years, again, I was almost like an outsider coming in trying to fit in. The good thing was that I wasn't being called names such as Oreo cookie or really feeling like I was being bullied, but I did have the label of being a church girl. And, why wouldn't I? If there were ever any activities or gatherings that were scheduled, my response was probably no, I can't go, I have to go to church. Or there were activities that I couldn't participate in because of our beliefs. At that time, we, or at least I, wasn't allowed to go to movies. That wasn't something that all Christians did. It was a dark place, so you didn't know what was happening in movie theaters. So I wasn't allowed to go to the movies. So the challenge or the process of still trying to fit in continued after starting to attend my home schools beginning in junior high. I always thought that having a sibling would have made life a little easier, but I was very clear in the sibling that I wanted. I wanted an older brother. So obviously, if I'm here and he's not, then obviously that request would never be able to be fulfilled. But I really did. I really dreamt about being able to have the support or the presence of another sibling to kind of walk through and live this life with me. There was a time where I had thought about writing a book, and I still dream of writing. And the title of that book was going to be The Fly on the Wall, because that's how I felt like just this small entity or creature that had a perspective, a vantage point that was very different and unique, and just would allow kind of an outlet to kind of explain, what life as an only child, as a member of a first family or a family in leadership, and what that felt like. Again, I am extremely grateful because I know it's nothing but the grace of God that has allowed me to grow in my love for Him and the things of God and the people of God in the way that I have, because others have different stories where, they run from church and anything that has to do with it. And that never seemed to be an option for me, never a desire for me, I guess I should say. And so the foundation that my parents and family have provided for me is one that I am eternally grateful for, and will give praise to God every day, because I do realize that it could have been another way, and my experiences could have created walls and strongholds that I could still be battling to this day.
Church was a major part of our lives growing up. My first church experience would have been at the St. Stephen's AME Church.
My grandparents, my grandfathers on both my father's side and my mother's side pastored churches. My father's father was the pastor at First Apostolic Faith Church in Baltimore City, and my mother's father pastored Gospel Tabernacle, and his church was located in Edgemere, Maryland.
But it was one particular Sunday that my mother told us about that we might have been on our way to St. Stephen's, but my mother made the decision to visit this church on Caroline and Lombard Streets on the corner, First Apostolic Faith Church. She decided to go in to visit instead of making a trip out to Essex. So we went in, and I believe what she said was that first day, that first Sunday she attended, was the start of her life being changed. Me, my sister, my brother Tony, my mom, we developed some of the closest relationships, friendships, best friendships that we still have today, actually. This is the place where I was baptized, I received salvation, where we did our first church work and involved in church, involved in youth ministry. This is where my mom received the freedom that she needed, that she deserved, through different messages, through some of the relationships that she had. This is where my mother received the strength and the courage to be able to walk away from the life that we were in our home, the abusive relationships that we've had. My mother was able to walk away from that, and we were able to go and live our lives on our own. So it was just for us, for me, just a whole new life, just the freedom that we had at that time to just be able to be us and be a happy family once again.
So church and family were pretty synonymous for me. After I was 7, my father began pastoring a church in Baltimore City called the United Pentecostal Miracle Church. And so, as I said, church and family pretty much went hand in hand. Church was the one place I was pretty much guaranteed to be able to see both my parents in the same place, as well as aunts, uncles, cousins, and as a result, there was really no clear line of demarcation between the two. I enjoy church. I was pretty much involved in everything. I enjoyed being on the usher board, singing on the choir, the youth and young adult department. Anything that I could be allowed to participate in, I probably was involved in, and I enjoyed that. United Pentecostal Miracle Church, when we arrived, and for years, has always been a close-knit family church. And so as an only child, and then as the pastor's daughter or the pastor's kid, that provides a different perspective, a different experience. And so although it wasn't quite as difficult as the school environment, and I didn't feel like I stuck out like a sore thumb as much, there was still that ongoing challenge to try to figure out, where do you fit in? Where can I feel comfortable? And so again, that process just continued from one setting to the next. But overall, I enjoyed growing up in church and the opportunities that it provided.
So at our church, at First Apostolic, great experience, great relationships, great friendships that I have and developed there. But there was one particular relationship that I would develop at First Apostolic.
So First Apostolic consistently had night services then. So no matter what time we may have gotten out of service at United, there was opportunity to go and fellowship down First Apostolic.
This is when I was in my teens, I guess early teens. I found out that there was this young girl who was after me. And this young lady, she didn't even go to the church at the time. This was her grandfather's church. She was born there.
I would probably say when I was around 12 years old, I spotted this quiet boy who was, in my opinion, quite handsome. And he was very well put together. He dressed nicely, I guess, however nice you can dress at 12. And he got my attention.
She would come down to the church sometimes for services for different events, or sometimes just to be with her family, spend time with her cousins. And I knew she liked me, and I think she had a feeling that I liked her too.
I remember vividly when I was at Deer Park Junior High School, and covering our textbooks every year or every quarter with those brown paper bags from the grocery store. His name would end up on my book. Monica Loves Edwin. Now, mind you, I hadn't said a word to Edwin at that point. but his name would be on my books. And I would say it took about 4 years for us to finally have a conversation, like a real conversation.
Family members and different friends, some who are older than us, who would talk to us separately and say, she liked you, he liked you, whatever, try to get us together. But it was in 1987. I feel like an old man. 1987 that we had a commission concert down at the church at First Apostolic. Commission concert, who was one of the biggest groups at the time during that time. So we arrived to the church for the concert. I was with Ben Hopkins, one of my closest friends. And when Monica arrived, the three of us were talking. Monica and Ben are cousins. So the three of us were, just talking, chit-chatting and whatever. So Ben decides to say, I'll be back. But he did this on purpose, to leave Monica and I alone. So this was the first conversation that Monica and I really had together. This was the conversation where we exchanged numbers, and the numbers that we exchanged were our home telephone numbers, the phones that are connected to the wall with the wire connected to them, not our cell phones. I don't even know if we had beepers or pagers at that time. So we exchanged phone numbers, and at that point, the rest is history.
We would speak, we would say hello, because he was close with one of my cousins, Ben, and one of my close friends, Aaron. We would be in the same circle. So I would see him, he would see me, but as far as any real conversation, that never happened. So I guess I was, kind of silently stalking him, and I'm sure he's probably going to say
she was on me hard.
But anyway, 4 years, we finally had a conversation because of family and friends kind of setting it up and going between us. And ever since then, we've been in each other's lives. And so I met who would become my husband at church. So the interesting thing about our dating life is we were on and off for 10 years. And during those 10 years, there were a few times that I would break up with him to talk to other guys, which is what it was called then. And I kind of prided myself on never, trying to be secretive or sneaking or cheating on him. I thought I was doing the honorable thing, and letting him know I needed a break or I wanted to talk to somebody else. And that happened on several occasions.
We were 17 and 16. But as years went past, even though we had our struggles, we had moments where we would break up. We had times where we were seeing other people. And, one breakup we had, I honestly thought it was over. I really thought it was over. And I think that breakup was probably at a point where I felt that Monica was the person that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. But we had this major breakup, and I really thought that was just, forget about it. That was a done deal.
So we had those kind of periods, and then, of course, there were times when he would be interested in somebody else or somebody interested in him. And, of course, those would be times when, my eyes would be open a little bit. But ultimately, we will always find our way back to each other, and in 1997, September the 27th, we became husband and wife.
Getting married was so amazing to me, so major for me. It was, a great day, a great experience to go through that process. And I have, since that day, have just been the happiest person in the world.
I couldn't have asked for any more. I really do believe that he is God's gift to me. He's absolutely my best friend. There's not anything that I can't talk to him about. There are some very difficult conversations that I've had to have and we've had to have, and he's just been consistently present, understanding, supportive, and just amazing.
I'm not saying that every day has been perfect. We've had our struggles, our ups and downs, or whatever you want to call it. But this has been a wonderful, amazing experience for me that just being married. And as a result, we have 3 wonderful sons, Joseph, Noah, and Zion.
We managed to honor or fulfill the 3-year goal as far as not having our first child until we had been married for 3 years. So Joseph, our oldest, was born in 2000. And then after that, everything as far as a plan just kind of went out the window. Noah, our middle son, was born 2 years later, just 1 week shy of Joseph's birthday. And Zion was born roughly 2.5 years after Noah. And we actually had a miscarriage in there as well. So the 2 kids, 3 to 5 years apart, that just didn't materialize. And let me also say that birth control isn't always as effective as people might think it is. So just FYI for you out there.
I thank God for my family, for my sons, and who God has created them to be. 20, 18, and 16 at this point. So thank God for the men, the young men that God created for us. And because of my experiences growing up, because of everything that I had to go through, because of my experience of not having a father, not having a positive role model in the home when I did have one in the house, I knew and I made up in my mind that, God, if you allow me to get married, if you allow me to have my own children, that I will be all that I can be to my family.
We are now the parents of 3 amazing sons. I don't know that I ever really thought about, do I want to have a daughter? Do I want to have sons? But after having Joseph and Noah, I really feel like, I was kind of like a boy's mom. And that was kind of what I had settled into. When we were pregnant with Zion, they actually told us that you're having a girl. And we were kind of like, yay. Like, okay, how do we do that? How do we get adjusted to it? And just as we were kind of wrapping our brains around it and getting excited about it, and me coming to some peace about realizing that there would be another female who would completely monopolize Edwin's attention and have his heart, we had another sonogram and they said, oh, sorry, it's a boy. So again, I would become another boy's mom, and we would have our 3rd son.
I was thinking back to when my sons were little, and I've heard people say this, other fathers say this, that when they come home for work or just come in the house from being out, they felt like a superhero coming in the house because of their kids happy to see them. And that's how I felt coming home from work or coming in the house from somewhere. Man, my kids would run up to me, Daddy, Daddy, and grab me and jump on me and whatever. Man, I felt like I did feel like a superhero. That was very special, a big deal to me. And just also being married, I hope that I have been all that Monica wished and hoped for in a husband and a mate, a spouse. I just hope that I have exceeded her expectations. And I believe that God has created this family just for us. When you think about your life, you think about all of your experiences, you think about all that you go through, and I think about how my mom made the decision to visit First Apostolic, and I know that it wasn't just about me, but just to be selfish in this moment, I believe that God sent my mom to that church that day just for me, just for my path, for my destiny, for the outcome of my life, that God knew that that's what I needed for my life. And I can truly say that I am blessed.
When it came to marriage and children and family, there were some things that I really, dreamt and hoped for. I wanted to have a husband who was present, engaged, and involved. I wanted to be able to create a home where there was lots of happiness and laughter, and I feel like we achieved that most of the time.
Monica and I, we were engaged for 2 years. And throughout the engagement, Monica kept asking about me coming to her church or just us being together. And I kept reassuring her that once we're married, I'm leaving First Apostolic and I'm going to join you at your church. And I kept that promise. As soon as the day I said I do, I became a member of, at that time, the United Pentecostal Miracle Church. So at United Pentecostal Miracle Church, became a member. That's where I became a deacon, church work, did everything, everything related to ministry I was basically doing. But in those years, in those early years, being a pastor, or Monica being a pastor, that was the furthest thing from on our mind. We weren't even thinking about that, being pastors or leading the church or anything like that. But at some point in our lives, that did happen. Monica became pastor of the United Pentecostal Miracle Church, which is now Beacon of Light, Citadel of Praise. And as of 2 years ago, was it 3 now? 2 or 3 years ago, I was also consecrated as pastor along with Monica, where we are both now pastoring the Beacon of Light, Citadel of Praise Church. And sometimes I think about it and just like, wow, I cannot believe it. I am actually a pastor. But church life, ministry, is a major part of our lives. Like I said, it wasn't something that I thought would happen, but it did. And even having children and our sons and being able to watch them work in ministry, do ministry, and what appears to us is something that they enjoy doing, that they do voluntarily. We don't have to make them, force them to do what they do.
And we also made time for them to be involved in different sporting activities. And so trying to create that balance and having them be more well-rounded and involved and able to foster relationships with people in addition to their church family members was something that we were happy to be able to provide for them.
They are fantastic musicians, our church musicians, audio visual, online services, everything that we do music-wise, online, flyers, social media is all done by our sons. So I thank God for their talents that God has blessed them, God has blessed them with, and all that they do in ministry. But yes, here we are, pastors leading the church life, and I did not imagine in our early years that we would be here. But we try to keep a well-balanced life.
It's just really amazing how God orchestrates the lives of two people to walk two different paths that ultimately intersect at a set time. We talk about the set time in ministry from a spiritual context as kairos moments. And I believe that God establishes kairos moments across all of the aspects of our lives. And I'm just blown away as to how God did that for us.
When you look at a puzzle, you have all of these pieces, different shapes, different sizes, and you try to figure out how they connect. But when you get them all connected and figured out, it becomes a beautiful picture of whatever it may be. So we look at the lives, our lives, the two of us, how God took two people with different stories, completely different stories, and put us together and made such a beautiful life, a beautiful marriage, a beautiful family. And nobody but God can do something like that.
Thank you for taking the time to walk with us through various chapters of our journey as a family. In our experience and through observation, it is my opinion that the church has failed at times to nurture the holistic needs of family. Although there is emphasis on the importance of worshiping together, dealing with the challenges, the traumas, and the circumstances that families go through may not be attended to as it should. I do believe that there are times that the church is guilty of fostering a spirit of silence and pretense and leaves many of us wondering, how are we going to make it through? And does not provide for us the practical application of biblical principles so that we know how to live everyday life.
Diving in with the waters, I believe, is a path to freedom for those who need it. It's an opportunity for those of you to share your stories, to share your family stories, to empower, to uplift, to inspire. I believe that the church, in some ways, as Monica has said, has failed families. It is my opinion that as long as you come to church, in some cases, you come to church, you do what your job may be, you're giving of your tithing and your offering, that's all that matters. But when it comes to personal needs, when it comes to the needs of serving your family and being able to minister to the needs of the family, I think the church has failed in those areas in some cases. So it is our hope that through diving in with the waters that we can address some of the family issues that may not be addressed in a church setting. We hope that this will be an opportunity to hear different stories because we all have a story to tell. So it is our hope that as you view our episodes, that you will be inspired, to tell your story and share to be a blessing to others.
Next month, our focus is going to be on building healthy relationships and establishing healthy boundaries. That is a topic that is quite loaded, especially when it comes to families. So we encourage you to stay on the lookout and even reach out to us. If that is an area that you have been challenged in and trying to maintain or establish healthy relationships, reinforce boundaries that are protective for both you and those you love, we would love to hear from you to know exactly what the needs are. So again, we encourage you to reach out to us through our various social media platforms, as well as through our email address, wellwaters@gmail.com. We appreciate you so much, and we pray that you and your families are blessed.
Before we end, I would like to shout out our nephew, Anthony Waters Jr. He is the owner of the Moore Water Company. We are so proud of what he is doing, and we are so proud of these sweatshirts that we are wearing today. You can check out his website. You can follow him on social media, on Instagram. And we're just proud of the work that he's doing with those who have suffered with strokes. So we appreciate him. And we just like to say thank you again to everyone for checking us out today. And we hope to see you soon.